Inside the Serapeum at Saqqara, 24 stone boxes line an underground tunnel carved into solid bedrock. Each one weighs up to 100 tons. Each one was cut from a single block of stone, and not just any stone, granite. Granite has a hardness rating of 8 out of 10, harder than steel, harder than most modern cutting tools, one of the most difficult materials on Earth to work with even today. Modern engineers use diamond-tipped machinery to cut granite. The official explanation is copper chisels, stone hammers, and abrasive sand. Mainstream Egyptology has held that position for over a century. But the marks left on that granite do not match copper. They match a machine that no ancient civilization should have had. Not a better tool. A different kind of energy entirely. An energy source that has never been identified in any ancient artifact, any ancient text, any ancient site, anywhere on Earth, except in one inscription, read by Egyptologist Salim Hassan in 1938. Catalogued without comment, sitting in a restricted section of the Cairo Museum archive, and describing in plain administrative hieroglyphic text a power source that has no name in any language we fully understand. In the next several minutes, you will see what the stone proves was used to cut it, why modern physics can identify the output but cannot explain the input, and why the power source that drove this machine remains the most disturbing unsolved question in the history of human civilization. This is a truth that has been ignored for a very long time. Make sure you stay with me until the very end, because what follows may completely change the way you look at history. But here's what makes this stranger. The inscription was almost lost. Salim Hassan first documented the KV-17 panel in 1938 during his final survey season at the Valley of the Kings. He filed a note describing the panel as tool-related administrative text of uncertain classification. He moved on. He never returned to it. He died in 1961. The note sat in the Cairo Museum archive for decades. In 2017, an independent researcher accessing related survey materials photographed the panel. The photograph was shared on a restricted engineering history forum. Within 72 hours, the thread was taken down. The researcher's archive access was revoked. But the photograph had already been copied, and what it showed was a hieroglyphic panel, written in the same administrative script Egyptian scribes used for quarry logs and labor records, describing a cutting mechanism with specific components, a specific operational sequence, and a power source described using a term that appears exactly once in the entire Egyptian administrative corpus. One inscription, one term, no parallel anywhere else in the ancient world. An inscription read by Hassan's team in 1938, never published as a technical document, never analyzed by anyone trained in physics rather than Egyptology. This is not speculation. The KV-17 panel exists. The Serapeum boxes exist. The tool marks are in the stone. The cut signatures have been measured by engineers, not historians. What follows is what the stone proves, and why the proof points to something we cannot explain. The inscription breaks into 3 components. It begins with the tool itself. The hieroglyphs describe a rotating cutting instrument. The marker attached to the tool phrase is the one used for mechanisms that spin, not for ritual implements. The text specifies 2 operators and a scale indicator that rules out any handheld device, a large rotating tube, pressed against stone, under controlled downward pressure. The second component is the abrasive material fed continuously into the mechanism. The word is shefet, a paste mixed at the cutting site. Modern analysis of ancient quarry drill hole remnants at Aswan has identified crushed corundum in those holes. Corundum, hardness 9, the material in modern industrial grinding discs. The ancient Egyptians mixed corundum paste and fed it into a rotating tube against granite. That much the inscription and the quarry evidence confirm together, the same way a maintenance log and a parts receipt confirm what a machine was made of. But the third component is where the inscription runs out of words we recognize: the power source. The text uses a phrase, nefer and pet kedap, that translates approximately as the perfect turning of the heavenly directive. The word nefer means perfect or optimal. The word pet means sky or heaven. The word kedap means to operate or control a mechanism. And the word between them, the one that specifies what kind of turning, is a term that appears nowhere else in any Egyptian administrative text, religious text, or literary text ever cataloged. One word, one inscription, no parallel. Egyptologists who have encountered it have rendered it variously as divine vibration, celestial resonance, and in one unpublished note from a 1992 survey of the KV-17 archive photographs, simply as unknown mechanism type. The inscription is describing a power source. It is using the most specific administrative language available, and the most specific administrative language available produces a term that nobody can identify. The power source has no name in any record we can fully read, and then comes the part the stone proves. Because whatever that power source was, it left a physical signature in the granite that modern physics can read precisely. And what it says is this: the cutting process produced zero subsurface fracturing. None. This is the fact that changes everything. When any mechanical force, copper, iron, diamond, modern drill, is applied to granite, the crystalline structure below the cut fractures. Tiny cracks propagate downward from the cutting interface into the intact material. It is unavoidable. It is the physical consequence of force meeting crystalline stone. Think of it like snapping a piece of wood. The fibers tear below the breakpoint. You can always see the damage beneath the snap. Granite works the same way. Every cut should show fracturing below it. These don't. The stone below each cut is pristine, as if the granite wasn't broken at all. Every tool leaves it, every tool. Except one category of process. When a cutting surface vibrates at ultrasonic frequency, above 20,000 cycles per second, the vibration disrupts the crystalline bonding at the contact point so rapidly that the stone separates cleanly at the boundary without propagating cracks into the material below. The subsurface stays intact. The cut boundary is clean, the signature is precise. And the Serapeum box interiors and the Aswan drill cores show exactly this. Zero subsurface fracturing, a clean boundary, intact crystal structure below. The stone was not broken, it was separated, at a frequency above human hearing, 4,000 years ago. What follows from that is the problem. Ultrasonic cutting requires a power source capable of sustaining vibration at 20,000 cycles per second or above. In modern practice, this is achieved through a piezoelectric transducer, a device that converts electrical current into mechanical vibration at the driven frequency. It requires electricity, it requires a frequency generator, it requires a controlled, sustained, high-frequency energy source. No ancient civilization has produced any artifact, any mechanism, any residue, or any text that describes an equivalent power source. Not Egypt, not Mesopotamia, not China, not anywhere. The output of the process is in the stone. The input has no ancient equivalent anywhere on the planet. We can describe exactly what physical process produced those cuts. We cannot identify what powered that process. The inscription names it. The name means nothing we recognize. And that gap between a proven output and an unidentifiable input is not a historical curiosity. It is a fundamental problem for every assumption we make about the technological ceiling of ancient civilization. The geographic spread compounds the mystery. The same four signatures, zero subsurface fracturing, 1 mm advance rate, corundum at the shear interface, point source thermal alteration, appear not just at the Serapeum and Aswan, but at the Valley Temple of Khafre, at Giza, at the Abu Rawash Quarry in the north, and at the Karnak inner sanctuary column bases in the south. Sites separated by hundreds of kilometers, different dynasties, different centuries, the same cutting process, the same power source, operating consistently across an entire civilization for an unknown period, and then gone, uniformly, everywhere at once, not phased out, gone. Every site simultaneously. The power source did not run out locally and persist elsewhere. It ended everywhere at once. That is not a technology being superseded. That is a power source being cut off. Here's what the standard translations leave out. The groove advance rate in the Aswan drill cores, measured by engineer Christopher Dunn in 1983, is approximately 1 mm per rotation through solid granite. That number requires a specific combination of rotational speed and downward pressure. When engineers calculate what power input is needed to sustain that advance rate through granite using a corundum abrasive slurry, the number exceeds what any human-powered mechanism can produce by an order of magnitude. A bow drill, a lever system, a counterweight, none of them generate the sustained power required. The groove in the stone implies a power input that has no human-powered ancient equivalent. The inscription calls it the perfect turning of the heavenly directive. The stone calls it something that does not exist in any known ancient energy inventory. Both sources are pointing at the same gap, and the gap has never been filled. The single term in the KV-17 inscription, the one that appears nowhere else in 4,000 years of Egyptian writing, has been examined by 3 scholars who have had access to the archive photograph. The first, in a 1992 survey note, called it unknown mechanism type and did not pursue it. The second called it a hapax, a word appearing only once in all known literature, impossible to cross-reference. The third, an Egyptologist at the Oriental Institute in Chicago, described it in a 2019 conference presentation as a term from a vocabulary we do not have. Not partially recovered, not have at all. The inscription is using a technical term from a technical register of Egyptian that has left no other trace. One word, the name of a power source, in a language system we cannot access. And whatever that power source was, it cut granite without fracturing it, advanced through stone at a rate that defies human-powered mechanisms, left point source thermal signatures at its contact boundaries, and stopped completely and permanently across an entire civilization at an unknown point in pre-dynastic history. The thermal evidence closes the argument. Under high magnification, the cut surfaces of the Serapeum boxes show point source thermal alteration at the cut boundary, not distributed heat from friction, concentrated heat at the exact contact point, a tiny zone of thermal change that does not spread into the surrounding material. When 2 surfaces rub together, heat distributes across the friction zone. When ultrasonic vibration creates micro-impacts at a cutting interface, the heat concentrates at the contact point and dissipates before it can propagate. Pinpoint heat, not spread heat. The Serapeum surfaces show pinpoint heat. 4 separate physical signatures now align. 0 subsurface fracturing. 1 mm advance rate per rotation. Corundum abrasive at the clean shear interface. Point source thermal alteration. All 4 are consistent with ultrasonic machining. All 4 are inconsistent with any power source identified in the ancient world. The machine is proven by its output. The power source is proven by its absence from everything we know. The Diary of Merer, the oldest papyrus ever found in Egypt, discovered at Wadi El Jarf in 2013 by archaeologist Pierre Tallet and dated to the reign of Khufu, records the movement of limestone blocks to Giza in administrative language. It is a shipping log. It records quantities, routes, and time periods like a modern logistics document. The limestone work is documented. The granite work is not. For a civilization that recorded everything, labor rosters, ration lists, delivery schedules, the absence of any granite cutting record is itself a finding. The most precisely cut stone in the ancient world left no paper trail, no quarry log, no tool inventory, no labor record, only one inscription in one tomb using one untranslatable term, as if the cutting happened outside the normal administrative system, outside the workforce that filed reports, outside the chain of command that kept records, as if whoever operated the machine was not part of the civilization that surrounded it. What the museums don't mention is the temporal inversion. The oldest granite cuts in Egypt are the most precise, not the most recent, the oldest. The later dynasties, the ones whose records we can read with confidence, show progressively rougher granite work, more fracturing, more irregularity, more evidence of ordinary mechanical tools. Technology is supposed to improve over time. Civilizations start crude and develop toward precision. Egypt runs backward. The finest work predates the documented civilization, which means the technology did not develop in Egypt. It did not evolve from simpler methods. It arrived already operating at a level later generations could not match, could not maintain, and eventually lost entirely. The KV-17 inscription is not describing an invention, It is describing something inherited, something received, something that came from a source the inscription names and we cannot identify, and that left, when it was gone, only what it had cut. 4,000 years of granite, and one term in one inscription that nobody can translate. The unfinished obelisk at Aswan sharpens the impossibility. The largest obelisk ever attempted, still attached to the bedrock where it was abandoned, shows the same zero-fracture clean shear cuts across its entire length, including sections near the crack that mainstream archaeology says caused the abandonment. But the cuts continue past the crack, at the same precision, the same clean boundary, the same undamaged subsurface. Whatever stopped the work was not the crack. The machine kept cutting after the crack formed, and then it stopped, not gradually, instantly. The cuts at the point of abandonment are as precise as the cuts at the beginning. There is no deterioration, no sign of a tool wearing out, no sign of operators losing strength or skill. The machine was running at full precision, and then it was not running at all. 1,000 tons of granite, mid-operation, and then silence. No record of why. No later attempt to resume. The power source did not fade, it stopped. And whatever it was, it never came back to the obelisk, or to the Serapeum, or to anywhere else in the Egyptian record. The technology that cut the finest granite work in human history simply ceased, and left us only the stone. The suppression of the evidence runs in four directions. Around 1336 BCE, after the death of Akhenaten, the priests of Amun chiseled his oval name rings from every monument in Egypt. Akhenaten had attributed the cutting technology to the pre-dynastic builders, the Shem-Su-Hor. He described the power source in his own inscriptions using language that matched the KV-17 term. After his death, every reference to pre-dynastic construction technology was removed. The priests were not protecting theology, they were protecting a timeline that could not accommodate what the pre-dynastic builders had known. In 391 CE, a Christian mob burned the Serapeum at Alexandria. The library held technical manuscripts cataloged under methods of the first stonecutters. Those texts burned. The catalog entry survives, the content does not. Napoleon's 1798 expedition produced the Description de l'Egypte. Volume 12 of the first edition, printed in 1813, contains French engineers' observations of the Serapeum interior surfaces they described as exceeding their instruments' ability to explain. That section was removed from the second edition of 1817. The pages are listed by number in the index. The content is absent. The fourth suppression runs through Zahi Hawass, who controlled Egyptian excavation permits from 2002 to 2011. In 2005, Christopher Dunn applied to conduct precision surface measurement of the Serapeum interiors using calibrated industrial gauges. Denied in 6 weeks. Risk of surface damage cited. A gauge pressed gently against stone does not damage stone. The real risk was the number the gauge would have returned. A surface flatness tolerance that no known ancient tool can produce, confirmed to modern measurement standards on the public record. That number has not been officially recorded. Now here's where it gets active. In 2021, a team from the École Normale Supérieure de Lyon applied for non-contact laser scanning of a single unoccupied Serapeum box. No touching, no excavation. A laser. The application was routed through the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities. As of 2024, it is listed as under review. The boxes are in the tunnel. The surfaces are unmeasured. The thermal and crystalline signatures that would confirm the ultrasonic process beyond any remaining doubt are sitting in a pending permit application in a government filing system in Cairo. The question the scan would answer, what powered the machine that cut these boxes, remains officially unasked. Now, let me be clear, I am not saying the ancient Egyptians had electrical generators or frequency synthesizers. The KV-17 inscription does not describe anything we can fully decode. The power source named in that panel is a term that appears once in 4,000 years of Egyptian writing and translates to nothing in our vocabulary. What the stone shows is output, 4 specific physical signatures that modern physics identifies precisely as the output of ultrasonic cutting. What the stone cannot show is the input, and that is the problem. We can prove what process cut the stone. We cannot identify what powered the process. We have the result. We have no explanation for what produced it. And in 4,000 years of archaeology, in every ancient site on every continent, no equivalent power source has ever been found. The machine is in the stone. The power source is in one untranslatable term. And the gap between them is the most important unanswered question in the history of technology. What we have to confront is what that gap means. The Serapeum boxes are still in the tunnel at Saqqara. The subsurface crystal structure is still undamaged below every cut. The corundum is still in the drill hole remnants at Aswan. The point source thermal alteration is still at the cut boundaries under magnification. The KV-17 panel is still on the wall of Seti I's lower corridor, carrying a power source description that appears nowhere else in the ancient world. The permit to scan the Serapeum surfaces is still pending, and the unfinished obelisk at Aswan, 1,000 tons of precisely cut granite, abandoned mid-operation with no explanation, cuts equally precise right to the point where the work stopped, is still lying in the bedrock where something put it down and never came back. Whatever powered the machine stopped and left no trace of what it was, only the cuts, still in the stone. The Diary of Merer documented every limestone block moved to Giza. It documented nothing about the granite. The KV-17 inscription names the power source once, in a vocabulary that left no other trace, in a term no scholar has fully translated. And the permit to measure the Serapeum surfaces precisely, the measurement that would confirm whether the power source left any residual signature in the stone, has been denied every year for 2 decades. Not because the surfaces might be damaged by a laser, because of what the laser might find. The stone has been asking the same question for 4,000 years. Someone has been making sure the answer stays buried.